Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome in to another fun-filled, exciting lecture from me, the one and only Coach Hughes. How's everybody doing out there in virtual world this afternoon or morning or middle of the night because you're cramming because, oh my gosh, the tests and quizzes are coming up? I don't know. Hopefully, you will find this to be informative as well. So, this is chapter 3, section 2 and 3. We kind of combine those two things. Everything that you need can be found in Canvas, in the modules there, if you're a student of mine. And also, there are many forms of these notes. You've got hard copies out there for traditional students. You have notes that are already completed online that you just read through. There is just this PowerPoint if you are a visual person, or if you are auditory and you need to hear something or somebody go over it. Hey, you found me. I'm right here. I'm going to go over it. I'm going to give you the lecture you deserve today. But quick review, where did we leave off? And I believe last time it was chapter 3, section 1, and it was all about civilizations. And that key word for that lecture was the word complex, because civilizations are indeed, in fact, very complex, complicated, if you would. They're complex because they have a lot of different parts. They've got cities and art and religion and governments and rotting. Oh my, that's a lot. And we're actually going to talk about rotting a little bit today, as some of those other topics as well. So sit back, relax, put your seat in the upright position, and get ready to go through some ancient world history. So let's begin. Chapter 3, Section 1 now. And of course, my picture is kind of on the screen. We'll kind of move that around a little bit. So the area that we were talking about in Section 1 is what is modern day the Middle East. More specific, probably Iraq. And it was Mesopotamia. And if you don't know what Mesopotamia is, we said in the last lecture, it's a Greek word meaning land between the rivers. And it was here that we had all sorts of civilizations develop, very complex, because it was ideal. You had two rivers to the left, to the left, to the left. You had the Euphrates River, and to the right, you had the Tigris River. They flooded frequently and unpredictably. I always look for that splash of water. We had a splash of water last time. So these rivers, they frequently, get that out, frequently and unpredictably flooded. But it left behind this nice fertile soil, silt, a mixture of fertile soil and rocks, and it was ideal for farmers. And farmers, they needed laborers, so they had a lot of kids, kind of like bringing up the baits there. So with all of that, you had population growth, and you had all these laborers. You had more techniques, technology. They learned how to dig ditches, canals, and bring water and control the water in floods and even in droughts. And that led to better production in crops that had a surplus, more than you need of something, to the population that was also growing. And for the first time, last section, people started thinking outside the box. They didn't have to be farmers. Majority still were, but they didn't have to be. And they started doing something called division of labor, where they started specializing in jobs like we do today. You might want to go to college to be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right. But we had all of that. So now we continue on with our lecture, The Rise of the World's First Civilization Today. So in the southern area of Mesopotamia, about 3000 BC, give or take, people known as the Sumerians, I always want to do samurais there, not yet, but the Sumerians created a complex that was a key word from the other day, advanced society. It was the world's first civilization. The Sumerians. Know it. It's a quiz question. It's a test question, okay? The world's first civilization. Sumerians. Okay? So most people in Sumer, that's how you pronounce it, not summer because it need another M, but Sumer lived in rural areas out in the country, not in the city. But they were governed from the urban areas. The people that lived in the cities controlled the surrounding countryside. Wouldn't you know it? Most people stayed and farmed and they controlled the food supply, but the people that went to the cities that did not control the food supplies, they kind of ended up being the big baddies. They were telling people what to do. They controlling everything. To some degree, it's kind of how it still is in 2020. Unbelievable. But one of the questions going forward, will the farmers ever realize that they really control everything because they control the food supply? Cut off food supply, you kind of cut off everything else. But the question is, will they realize it? We'll see. Okay. All right. Moving right along. Woo, going too fast. All right, Sumerian cities were city-states, and this is extremely important. City-states are cities. The city you live in. Maybe it's Newmarket or Hazel Green or Huntsville, Alabama. But in the ancient world, these cities acted as if they were their own countries. Think about that. These small populated cities. Think of it in 2020. What if Huntsville, it's pretty big, probably going to be the biggest city in Alabama one day, not yet, but think of Huntsville acting like it's the United States of America. Or think about how small Newmarket and Hazel Green are, and think about them acting like the United States. That's what they did. Cities acted like countries back then. Now, a monarch is a ruler of a kingdom or empire. They're in charge. Sumerians ended up fighting each other, and they often fought. So, to protect themselves, the city states had to build walls to surround their cities and protect them. Think of it like this: the high ground. Look at the picture on the screen there. So sometimes you had multiple walls. So if they tried to get, I'm using my cursor here, if they tried to get through this exterior wall, they still had another wall to get through. And a lot of times, if you had ideal geographical locations, you would want to build your city state up against a mountain. So back here, if you can see my cursor, some cities built it up against a mountain, so they only had these outer walls there. But why? Why? Think to the movies. How many of you like the movie Star Wars? Luke, I am your father. Stay with me for a second. So think about this: high ground, the walls. Think of it that way. High equals walls. See, there was this there's this movie called Star Wars. Actually, let's go back to probably the sixth one in the installment, which was the third one because it was a prequel. So if you go in order, it's really technically the third one. It gets complicated. Complicated, complex civilizations. There you go. All right, so here's what you have: walls around cities. They're there for their protection. Think of the movie in Revenge of the Sith, Star Wars. You had Obi-Wan Kenobi. And you had Anakin Skywalker. be Darth Vader. No spoilers. I'm sorry. Oh, I gave it away. Okay. Anakin Skywalker. Anakin. Obi-Wan. See, here's what you got. Right before Anakin officially becomes Darth Vader, listen to me. I am your father, Luke. Before that happened, there was a little movie called Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, in which Anakin starts to turn into Darth Vader. And there was this great lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker. Zoom, 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 zoom. And it was on a planet with lava. The floor is lava! Don't touch the floor, it's lava! So, this is one of an epic childhood game, if you've ever pretended that the floor is lava like I'm doing right now, in which Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker were fighting. And they fought on the lava lake, on things, high grounds, low grounds. And finally, at the very end, there was a scene. And Anakin was down near the lava river. And Obi-Wan was up top, the high ground. And Anakin, looking up at Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan says, Anakin, it's over. I have the high ground. And Anakin looks up at Obi-Wan and the high ground. And he says, I hate you. I hate you. And Obi-Wan's like, don't do it, Anakin. I have the high ground. High ground. The walls. The picture right there on your screen. The walls. Advantage. And Anakin, using his Jedi skills, he jumps up. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Boom. And he cuts off. Obi-Wan cuts off Anakin's arm. And two of his legs. And he slides down near the lava. And the lava is getting inches and inches closer to him. And Obi-Wan was like, you are the chosen one. You're my brother. And Anakin's going, I hate you. I hate you. And the lava from the heat catches Anakin on fire. But he didn't die. Is that a spoiler? I guess that's a spoiler. But Emperor Palpatine, he comes, he takes Anakin, and he turns him into Darth Vader. But the point is, the high ground is a tactical advantage in battle. Okay? So these are why these city-states, these small little cities that acted like big countries, they built these walls, as you see in the picture here, around their cities because it's a tactical advantage. If you have an army marching, they have to get over the walls, in which if you have archers, the archers are looking down and they are boom. Oh, maybe that's not broken. Okay, but they have the archer. They have all of these archers and they're shooting from the top down, and it's like rainfall to the soldiers on the ground because, again, the walls, the high ground is a tactical advantage for the people inside. The city-state has a tactical advantage. If you try to do offense on them, they're going to provide their defense behind their walls, shoot arrows, rain it down on you, and it's going to be one heck of an adventure trying to conquer them. Walled cities worked in the ancient world. It's just like the Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3, Star Wars. You had that. Obi-Wan, Anakin. Obi-Wan had the high ground. And he defeated Anakin, who would become Darth Vader. But Obi-Wan had his number that day. And just like you see on the screen, a lot of city-states were protected by their walls, the high ground. Now, moving on, The size of the countryside controlled by each of these city-states depended on its military power, military strength. Stronger city-states controlled larger areas. Individual city-states gained and lost power over time, kind of like a domino effect. But let's take me, for example. Let's say that I am in the city-state of Newmarket. I am in an undisclosed location currently. But let's just hypothetically say that I'm located currently in the city-state of Newmarket. And I'm just a hard worker. I get along with everybody. Everybody likes me. And eventually, a leader emerges. And some people are natural born leaders. Maybe me. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe. So maybe I'm that natural born leader and people are just kind of drawn to me. I am well liked. I get along with everybody and I work my tail off. I promise you that. Okay. So I am in charge of Newmarket because I've become that leader. Let's say that my evil twin, Todd, hello, I'm Michael Todd. I won't tell you if that's a fake name or not. But let's say that I'm Michael Todd. And I'm from Huntsville, the city-state of Huntsville. And I was kind of given a task to do. And I did it pretty good. And people realized it. And they gave me a little bit more power. And then a little bit more power. And then a little bit more power. And then more power. And then more power. Once you get just a little taste of power, you want more. That's the way some people function. If they get just a taste of power, they crave it. They need more power. So in Huntsville, you have Michael Todd. he kind of craves that power. He got a taste of it. He wants more. And then in Newmarket, you have me, Rusty Hughes, and I'm just a hard worker, liked by everybody. And then in the city-state of Hazel Green, it's all chaos. Nothing's getting done. Everybody's lazy. There's no real rulers. Well, eventually what happens is Michael Todd in Huntsville, he has so much power in his own city-states, he starts to kind of look around at every other city-state. And he looks at Newmarket, and there's a lot of hard workers, and they're doing their jobs, and he's like, but he looks at Hazel Green, and they're like, they're kind of lazy over here. So he looks at his targets, he strategizes, and he gets an army ready, and he attacks Hazel Green because it's the easier of the two city-states. And just like that, his population increases, and the people of Hazel Green are incorporated into his own society. And then it's kind of like a domino effect. That was easy. That was easy. More, more. I need more. So he conquers another one and another one, and the dominoes start to fall. His population and military goes up, and then when he does get to a Newmarket with good people and good rulers, they're outnumbered. And this is how you have a tyrant or a dictator that comes to power, and he takes over city-state, 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 until you have something like Sargon. Around 2300 BC, the person you see on your screen right there, Sargon was king of the Akkadians. And like Michael Todd from Huntsville, he built up his army and he conquered City-state after city-state after city-state after city-state. Sargon built up a large army and defeated all the other city-states in Sumer, as well as all of northern Mesopotamia. When he had control of all of this, this was known as the world's first empire. And Sargon was the first dictator of really the known world at this point. So, with these conquests, Sargon did in fact establish the world's first empire. Quiz question, test question. Right there. Look on your screen. Over there. Over there. I can't point right. So, what is an empire? An empire is land with different territories and different people under one single ruler. Remember, Sargon got that taste of power, just like we said our fictional character Michael Todd from Huntsville got. Once he conquered his people, he went on to an easier target, doubled his population, built up a military. People became deathly afraid of him, and he marched on other city-states. He had the population, he had the know-how, he had the technology, the weaponry. Eventually, this empire stretched from the Persian Gulf all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. So all of this area here, you can see the boundary of the Akkadian Empire. And the Akkadian Empire lasted for 150 years. Of course, Sargon did not last that long, but the empire that he first established absolutely did. And we'll hear a lot, even when we get out of this chapter, about the Akkadians. Now, another thing that we talked about from section 1 in what makes civilizations complex is religion. And religion absolutely played an important role in nearly every aspect of Sumerians' public and private life. It was very, extremely important. And it was also complicated. The Sumerians practiced, circle B, remember B, quiz question, test question, they practiced something called polytheism. Now, when you have the word poly, that means many. So in this case, the worship of many gods. Kind of think like Greek mythology, jumping ahead just a little bit. But when you have the worship of many gods, it kind of turns into that. So the Sumerians, they practiced this polytheistic religion where they worshiped a lot of different gods and goddesses. People relied on priests to help them gain God's good favor. The priest interpreted the wishings of the gods and made offerings to them. Kind of sounds like predictions, and in Greek lore, something called an oracle. Each city-state had a pyramid, and you thought the Egyptians were the first, but it was actually the Sumerians. Each city-state had a pyramid-shaped ziggurat, or grand temple to honor the gods. The ziggurats were built very, very tall, as if they were reaching out to touch the heavens and the gods above. And they were honoring the gods by doing this and by building them so high. And it kind of alludes to the fact why the Egyptians, that we'll talk about in chapter 4, may have also reached out to do something very, very similar. Now, the social hierarchy developed in a lot of the Sumerian city-states. Kings were at the very, very top. Nobody was above them. Below them were priests and nobles, and the middle ranks included skilled craftspeople and merchants. Farmers and laborers made up a large working class, which, again, the farmers should be higher up because they control the food supply. Cut off the food supply and you ain't got nothing. Can't have nothing. And slaves were at the bottom of the social order. Now, remember, we are discussing ancient world history. So when you see the word slaves, this usually refers to conquered peoples, not necessarily dependent on ethnic background or skin color, but just people that were conquered were turned into slaves. When you usually hear that word slaves, everybody, especially from the United States, they kind of go into a Civil War mode and thinking about African Americans, but it's just not the case fully, excuse me, in ancient world. It's more or less the conquered individuals that were slaves at this time point. Now, let's get into the invention of writing. And remember, writing has only been around for the last 5,000 years. Anything else is called prehistory. And to some degree, we use fossil and artifact records to kind of say what happened, but we don't have a written record past 5,000 years, so it gets a little bit complicated. Now, the Sumerians made one of the greatest cultural advances in history. Circle A, know this for the quiz, know it for the test. It's going to be there. They developed cuneiform, also a vocabulary word found in Canvas under the modules if you're one of my students. Now, they developed cuneiform. They're these wedge-shaped symbols. The world's first writing system. It's not the hieroglyphics done by the Egyptians, but in fact, it is cuneiform done by the Sumerians. That is the world's first writing system. Now, the Sumerians used these sharp reeds, sounds like pens to me, to make wedge-shaped symbols on clay tablets, like you see right here in the picture. And it wasn't per se letters like you are used to today, but more like symbols. Think back to the caveman and the drawings on the walls. You kind of have an abbreviation of that. Now, this was kind of, and I'll move the picture so you can see the H better a little bit. There you go. This was the writings of cuneiforms. And I want you to do something. I want you to spell out your first name. So if your first name was Bo, B-O, then you would draw these symbols, these arrows for B, and excuse me, I got a little cough here. And then these arrows for O and a little sideways A there. And that spells Bo. So it's a little complicated. If you have a larger name, say Savannah or Jonathan, then if you're Savannah, SAVANNAH. V? Look at the V. You know how long it's going to take me to draw a V? This is so complicated. Do you think it's quite possible that the Sumerians realized their own language, their own alphabet kind of system that you see on the screen here is a little bit complex? Civilizations. Gosh. Do you think that even back then there was some Sumerians that says, I'm not going to learn this. This is too much. I don't want to write a V or even though my name is Jonathan, I'm not going to write that J. Are you kidding me? Sure. In every era of human history, there are lazy individuals. And people probably shorten this, but they probably came up with a shortcut. Wouldn't you think? I think they did. Let's look at this. So here's what happened. The Sumerians first used cuneiform to keep records for business, government, and temples. And you can imagine writing all that is complex, complicated. Circle C. You kind of need to know C for the test and the quiz, but you also need to know D for the quiz and test. So as the use of cuneiforms grew, simple pictographs evolved to make it simpler. Involved into more complex symbols that represented basic parts of words rather than spelling out the letters. Those sneaky Sumerians, they're kind of doing a shortcut here. Can you ever, hold on a second. Oh, got a text message here. Well, I don't want to type it out. Let me just use my emoji here. We're not the first people. Come on, guys, think about this. If you have up here, over there, first one is bird. Isn't it much simpler to draw? Kind of looks like a coat hanger there, but isn't it much simpler to draw a picture of a bird than to go back and write it bird out, B-I-R-D? Or I'm going to just draw this bird and be done. Guys, they're using pictographs. We do the same thing on our cell phones today. How many of you have used an emoji during this lecture? Quick text. Make your life simpler. They didn't want to spell all this out. Some of you don't want to type it all out on your cell phone here. You use emojis. They use pictographs. They wanted to do a sun, didn't look like a sun, kind of looked like a sunset there, but that's what they did. Foot, much easier to draw a foot there at the bottom left than go back and have to write out foot. F-O-O-T. Or I can just draw a foot, an emoji, a pictograph. The question arises, are you very, very different from the people that lived long ago? They did these pictographs to make their lives easier when it came to writing. You do this daily, whether you're using social media or whether you're sending a text to your friend or parents, you use emojis. And parents are getting really good about just reading emojis. And then there's some parents that goes, what is that? Savannah, what did you mean by this? What is this? Foot, heart, love. Can you not just write it out? No, it's more simpler to do a pictograph, or in our case today, emojis. We're not that different from people that lived long ago. We have made our lives easier through texting by using emojis. They made their lives easier by drawing these picture symbols out rather than spelling out the words using their complicated cuneiform, the world's first system of writing system. Not that different. Now, writing was taught in schools. Becoming a writer, circle E, know this, the word scribe, quiz, test question, very important to people. And really, if you think about it, that was one of the only kind of college jobs that you could get. Not everybody knew how to read and write. And if you knew how to read or write, you could actually move up the social ladder and go possibly from a farmer down at the bottom to up here. Now, the kings and the nobles, they're still going to be at the top, but then you have a location for scholars and scribes. So, scribe was a way that you yourself in this ancient world could, in fact, change your stars, better yourself, make more money, become wealthier. It's one of the few jobs that you could. Scribes began to combine symbols to express complex ideas, still using those pictographs, ancient day emojis. In time, scribes wrote works on law, grammar, and even your favorite subject, probably mathematics. All right. Sumerians also started to write stories, proverbs, songs. And before you could write, people literally made up songs so that you could remember things. Okay. There's plenty of YouTube videos out there to remember things, such as one thing that comes to mind from Hannah Montana. Not not that I watched every episode of Hannah Montana when it was originally on, but Miley Cyrus, Miley Stewart in Hannah Montana, she did the bone song in science to remember all 206 bones. How do I know there's 206 bones? I remember the song. That's how. That's how people, and they started writing it down from songs, poems to celebrate the military victories, long poems called epics. Quiz and test question. You got to know what an epic is. A long poem, usually about a hero for his heroic deeds. All right. Now, the Sumerians were also the first to build wheeled vehicles. The wheel. And you thought that was the cavemen. It's the Sumerians. They used carts and wagons. They invented the potter's wheel. Quiz and test question. As a craft person, you could make bowls or other things that you could trade for food. because most people were still farmers, but people were starting to branch off, as we said in last lecture. They also invented, I don't know if you can say they invented, but they started to use the ox-drawn plow that greatly improved farm production, along with other things like building ditches and canals that got more water to areas and prevented floods in some cases because they were channeling those water systems. They also built something that we are, thank you, the Sumerian sewers. Underground sewers. Now we ain't got to smell it, if you know what I mean. Under the streets. Can't imagine what they were doing before this. Walking down the street and having bowls and just sloshing stuff out. And I thought somebody threw something at me. They also learned how to use bronze to make stronger tools and weapons that made them a very fierce military power in this region. They named thousands of animals and planets and minerals, and you thought that was saved for the scientific community, but the Sumerians actually did that, and they used them to produce healing drugs. One of the first times that you see the use of medicines in cities and towns and villages and rural areas. Also, the clock, the calendar we use today are based on Sumerian methods of measuring times, although our calendar kind of comes from the Romans and Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar and Octavian, but go back even further and you have the Sumerians. Circle G, no C, quiz question, test question. The Sumerians also developed a special art form called the cylinder seal that you see a picture right over there of. The cylinder seal was a small stone cylinder that was engraved with designs and could be rolled over wet clay to decorate containers or sign documents. And if you think about it, if you use this correctly, it's the kind of the world's first copy machine. It is write out what you need and roll, next, roll, next, roll, next, roll, or you can sign documents. This is a primitive device, but if you do it correctly, like it shows there, and make the correct symbols, you've got technically the world's first primitive copy machine, which makes writing a lot easier and quicker to get out to the masses. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes Chapter 3, Section 2-3. I hope you have learned something. All my contact information can be found in Canvas on the homepage there if you're one of my students. But as always, I am here to help with any and all questions that you may or may not have. So that concludes another topic on the ancient world of civilizations and the Sumerians being the first civilizations and some of their inventions and how they advanced history just a little bit further. Have a great day, whatever it may be, whether it is morning, noon, or not. And hey, I hope you've enjoyed everything. Good luck. See you next time.